we'll now quickly proceed. So to synthesize and come back, we had started the class with the case. We covered ethics in international affairs and corporate governance issues. I talked to you about the power and the aspects of good governance. Then we covered transparency, its examples, and what are the challenges with too much transparency. Then we moved on to accountability, its examples, and what could be the challenges with too much accountability. Then we built a relationship between the two, how transparency typically leads toward a better accountable ecosystem. And we had examples around social audit, etc. Then, of course, we discussed the pitfalls of too much transparency, and few of you gave very good answers on that. And then coming back, we were on values in public administration. We talked around certain constitutional values, democratic values, and welfare state values as examples. So in every toolkit that I am teaching you today, from good governance point of view, we are covering its examples. We are also covering what could be the challenge of too much governance. So the challenges with upholding values could be subjectivity in interpretation. What could be justice for you may not be justice for me, and vice versa. What could be liberal for you may not be liberal for me, and vice versa. Similarly, conflict between personal and administrative values. When you're trying to rule through values in public administration, my values or my inner conscience could be very different than what the public administrator value could be. That could be another challenge. And the third challenge could be changes in socio-political scenarios affecting perceived value. So after values, we now move towards building ethical infrastructure in public administration. Building. All right. So we have first covered values, and now we are covering another toolkit of ethical infrastructure. It is the moral principles that govern the behavior and conduct of a society. Remember the definition of ethics: group of people. The importance, like we all know, it sustains public trust. It ensures efficient and effective governance, fair service delivery. Note the word service delivery, very important. Service delivery word could come, or ethics in administration could come. You can use these terms if one is missing. Aid in conflict resolution. Can anyone now tell me examples of ethical infrastructure in public administration? Kirti?
And we have the code of conduct for the
Very-
civil servants.
Very nice. There is civil services conduct rules, so that you are not operating on a subjectivity. They're defining what should be the code of conduct. And then, for example, Sumant was talking about the Nolan principles in UK. 7 principles for public life. Remember, we had covered these 7 principles of public life in the first class also. They also define the ethics in public administration. Objectivity, accountability, integrity, selflessness, openness, honesty, leadership. You can use the Nolan principles in ethical administration and use of discretion. There is a discretion that may be a challenge also, by the way. Too much discretion can lead to misuse of power. But we also realize that rules and laws cannot be built for each and every scenario. Now, can anyone this time take a crack at what could be the challenges in maintaining ethics in public administration? I told you the challenges with transparency, with accountability, with values in administration. Can you now think of the challenges in ethics in administration? Twinkle?
Ma'am, there may be bureaucratic resistance from officers who are indulging in corrupt practices. If there is, second, there could be unlawful action taken against whistleblowers if the whole system is corrupt, which acts as a deterrent for reporting misdemeanor.
That's
Ma'am,
fine. This may not exactly be a challenge of ethical administration, given that ethics are typically defined. So, in ethics, if we are defining that whistleblower should be protected, then it is not the challenge. Then the answer what I receive was not really the challenge of ethical administration. The challenge may be pressure from political and influential entities. What is the challenge of ethical infrastructure? Pressure from pressure points, external. So if you all are bunch of bureaucrats who know how to now behave because you have the ethical code of conduct, but you could get pressured by political figures, as we were seeing in the case study today. There could be ambiguity in moral choices as well. The third one is lack of institutional support and safeguard against ethical violations. If there are lack of institutional support when there are ethical violations taking place for the bureaucrats, then why would a bureaucrat feel like taking an action against the ones who are unethical? Now, there is a very beautiful toolkit for resolving ethical dilemma. Is my action legal and in alignment with government policy? This is a checklist. You should have, by the way, that checklist for life and for answers, both. Is my action in alignment with the code of conduct? Number 3, do I think it's the right thing to do? Intuitionist philosophy. It was in your pre-read as well. Do I think it's the right thing to do? What will be the outcome for my agency, for my colleagues, other parties, and me? Could I justify doing it? Last but not the least, what would my action be if my actions were publicly scrutinized? So if you're going through an ethical dilemma as a public servant, if you ask yourself these questions, a lot of the answers will become clearer. These are important points. You can solve a lot of case studies through this. All right. Building a relation between values and ethics. We covered that very briefly in the first class. They both come from shared roots. Both derive essence from socio-cultural context and constitutional mandates. The values often give rise to ethical framework. Values are the larger gambit. And then ethics come. And then law comes. Remember that circular diagram I had built for all of you. Example of Gandhian ethics. His values of truth and non-violence translated into ethical governance principles. So it's a classic example of values becoming ethics in public administration. Naman would have also covered, but many people don't realize the reason why you study Gandhian philosophy or history around Gandhi is not just about independence. A lot of the moral, constitutional, and judiciary framework and construct that our nation sits on the pillars of Gandhian principles. So you need to know Gandhian philosophy, not because he was a virtuous man or anything. He may be, or he could have been, but as the future civil servant of our country, you need to know the pillars on which our country sits. Similarly, the code of conduct for civil servants, it's derived from administrative values, but are articulated as ethical practices. So these are two examples, code of conduct and Gandhian principles coming from values and getting translated into ethics. Question: how can a conflict between, are ethics and values in administration static or evolving? Anyone? And why or how so? Ananya?
Ma'am, I would say they are constantly evolving with the socio-cultural norms. I can take an example. We see that private ethics and public ethics, they converge because as of late, if we take the example of marital rape, in Indian society, it was considered a very private topic. But now we are talking about criminalizing it. So they are converging.
Beautiful. The involvement of civil servants on Instagram or on social media, it's a contemporary topic. But at the same time, if I were to be fair to them as well, everyone wants 2 cents of fame, 2 cents of publicity. The challenge is few roles do not allow you to do so. You're on taxpayers' money. You have to work behind curtains. So if you're looking for fame, if you're looking for cameras while you're conducting raids, that's fine for you as a person, but then you are in the wrong job. Choose correctly. I am not tainting someone with a morally bad picture because they are moving with cameras all the time. YouTubers do it, but they are YouTubers. They're on IAS, IFS, and IPS. So when you write that paper of ethics, do know what you really stand for. There will be changing times. There could be static time. There could be peaceful times. There could be war times as well. How do you behave is going to be really important. And that's why codifying ethical norms becomes really important. And reminding them through training is equally important as well. Not just training of IAS, IFS, and IPS, but training of the entire ecosystem. So that people are reminded continuously. Very interestingly, in fact, in private sector, this is very beautiful. McKinsey, BCG, Bain are the top 3 consulting firms. McKinsey has this strict no social media policy. Strict. You can't write your views on social media. You can't face camera on social media while you're serving McKinsey. BCG, on the other hand, has very liberal social media policy. We are fine whatever you would want to say as long as you clarify that these are your opinions, not the opinions of the organization. As an individual, I associated more with BCG. In fact, of 4 or 5 reasons because of which I chose BCG offer versus McKinsey offer was one of these. But I chose well and I complied with the law and the ethical rule. But you can't say that tomorrow I'm going to work at McKinsey and then breach that ethical code. You choose well. You know what you're getting into. And then you don't break that. All right. With that, we are almost at the second last topic in terms of tools and techniques of good governance, which is about public-private participation. You all would know PPPs. It is a beautiful way through which private efficiencies can come into governments. They both can collaborate. They both can produce the best intended outcome and output for our country. From the point of ethics, we have to ensure that these projects are in public interest, they maintain transparency and achieve intended goals. And once again, there are 2 sides to this coin. There are people who are going all over Gaga. There are BBC reports that Adani's wealth has rose in correlation to the rise of Narendra Modi. But correlation is not causation. Students of statistics will know correlation is not causation. There are opposition parties who are saying why Adani is getting all the contract. I do not have the information, by the way. I'm not saying that I am defending Adani or I'm supporting Adani. But what I'm largely trying to say is that you will not be able to, you can't conclude based on correlation. I was shocked that top media agencies on the name of just pinpointing ethics or whistleblowing without any concrete data are trying to whistleblow. So you also know the value of concrete data. Do we have any objective criteria to be able to call any PPP transaction misaligned where public interest was not kept at the highest priority and personal interest were? If that is the case, by all means, there should be vigilance. There should be all the external accountability measures that we have talked about that should come into existence. But without data, then you're all talks. Then you're just a YouTuber. Your job is to not become a YouTuber. Talk without facts, share opinions. Your job is to take actions when there is a need for it and be vigilant. And we will talk about the rise of PPPs, the reason for adopting PPPs, pooling of resources, leveraging private sector efficiency we have discussed, and accelerating infrastructure and other service delivery. For the first year of Global Governance Initiative, we were a non-profit organization because our mission was always aligned with non-profits. But soon we realized non-profits are very inefficient. Hence, we converted ourselves to social for profit. That means impact comes first, profits come second. The challenge that non-profits struggle with is almost similar to the challenge they struggle with efficiency. Correct? Just wait a sec. I want to ensure my mic is the correct one. It should be. All of you can hear me, right? So coming back, we need to ensure that there is balance. We need to ensure why are we doing whatever we are doing. When I was a consultant with Government of India, then it was also a PPP. And for a very long period of time, I actually felt there should be no need of consultants in Government of India if government trains their people well. Apart from the value proposition that consultants bring, which is outside in perspective. That I, as Shatakshi, had a big picture view on Ministry of Women Affairs, Women and Child Development, and Ministry of Petroleum. That's the big picture and outside in perspective. But at a skill level, if Shatakshi is able to do data analysis or connected with business insight or connected with government and policy, the bureaucrats or at least their juniors should have the skill. So PPP should never be an easy medium to outsource the lack of skilling of the government. And once again, these are topics that you will not find in textbooks. But if you write them, that is going to fetch you marks because that's the realist answer. PPP should make sense when government's capabilities are beyond than what they should be able to do. Core should always sit with government. Peripheral can be outsourced when needed. And when it comes to ethical concerns in PPP, there is transparency and openness issues, which is what is going around the news with respect to you do not know whom is the bid given to. Was the highest bid given to? Was the lowest bid given to? Or were there back of the door entries to befriend people and get the contracts? Were there potential under-reporting of revenue sharing between private players and certain other parties if the contract is given? Was there any quid pro quo? You scratch my back, I scratch yours. Right? The second issue is equity and fairness. Toll road and user fees. We have to make sure that the fees that is charged is fair. And should it even be charged? Potentially barring some example. Private entities prioritize profit making over public and fair, and governments prioritize the opposite. How do we find a balance so that there is equity and fairness in such PPP transactions? Conflict of interest. Government officials may have stake or interest in the private firms, like we have discussed. And there could be favoritism and crony capitalism. Capitalism, by the way, is not bad. Many people don't understand the difference between it. There is crony capitalism. Crony capitalism is because of which we are living in an environment where it's almost impossible. I will not say impossible, but hard to live in a city like Delhi. I'm not using the word impossible because few of you still do. And I still go back to my parents who live in Delhi. But that's crony capitalism. You over-indexed on profits too much to the extent that other issues have become non-negligible. You'll have to solve them. And in PPP, does anyone want to talk about how do you now solve these ethical concerns for PPP projects? Kirti?
And one point I could think of is that
I can't
the
hear you.
PPP.
Is it just me? Wait, it should be me. Let me fix my... Yes, go on.
Can you hear me? And one point I could think of is that the projects should be run on democratic principles, because one main reason is that they are not accountable to the highest institution. For example, the NHAI, it's the government body. So when it will make roads, it is responsible to the parliament. But when it's given to the L&T, so they are not responsible. So one is that upholding democratic principles.
Beautiful. Thanks, Kirti. Shubham Pal, you want to contribute to this question?
Yes, ma'am. And there should be a code of conduct for the operation of all the PPPs, and there should be the provision of accountability, but not too much accountability, which would render delays and everything inefficiency. But accountability should be there.
Sure. So,
Uh,
Shubham, that's a good attempt at the answer. Wait, after this much content coverage and after pre-reads, I'm expecting more specific answers. How do you make them accountable? Or what would you exactly write in the code of conduct? Otherwise, they will just become jargons. Open bidding process, for example, ensures transparency. Disclosure of contracts, that ensure transparency. Training modules for bureaucrats and officials involved, training for ethical training and awareness. Fostering a culture of ethics and public welfare. Whistleblower mechanism, specifically going out of the way and encouraging internal and external whistleblowers. And with that, we are almost at the end of the masterclass. This masterclass will extend by 15 minutes because of the challenge that we had. Please make sure that you stay here so that you complete the entire content because you committed to live, and I appreciate you all staying here. We'll now cover the final topic with respect to tool and toolkits in ethics in public administration, which is citizen charter. How many of you have ever seen a citizen charter? I'm not going to ask you a question. I'm just trying to get a sense of the room. How many of you have ever seen a citizen charter? You guys are amongst the top 1% of this country. Look at the ratio. I'm not judging others. All right. Imagine what would be why do I call you the 1% of the country? You had the fees to pay for misfits. We are all talking in English. You all have internet access. There is financial equity. There is internet equity. There is language equity as well. Imagine the state of tier 2 and tier 3 India. Most of them will not know what is citizen charter. Most of them, if they will know what is citizen charter, would have never seen one. Most of them who would have seen it, known it, would not know the value of it. You're entering in that scenario where this is the state of public administration, and let alone talk about the ethics. So let me show you a citizen charter, and that should be your level of curiosity always. Why am I studying citizen charter? Can I quickly Google what does a citizen charter look like? So let me show you a sample citizen charter. It is of Income Tax Department. I hope all of you can see this. Especially for departments which deal with money, the citizen charter becomes even more important. Look at how it is written: vision, mission, what they believe in. And then they talk about service delivery standards. We aspire to provide the following key services within specified timeline. Issue of refund along with interest under section 143, 6 months. Other return 9 months. We endeavor for X, the grievance redressal, petition of unredressed grievances filed before next higher authority will be decided within 15 working days. All grievances received will be redressed within 2 months from the month of their receipt. This will come in the deck that I decide to share with all of you. You should read this in detail. You will be able to get a lot more insights from answer writing point of view. And this is a good citizen charter. They're talking about their services. They're talking about their timeline. These things should exist at a state level and at a district level as well. And it's another thing. Do you just redress a grievance, or do you do a quality redressal of a grievance? Remember, we were talking about root cause redressal of grievances in my last class. good governance. If every time for a refund of consumer has to submit a grievance, that's not good governance. It should be automatic, right? If you are eligible. Correct? So we actually linked the grievance redressal root cause project that we had done. And the Department of CBDT and External Affairs were so happy with our work. They said that we would want to connect your ideas and solutions on systemic reforms with citizen charter work. How can we link citizen charter with systemic reforms? And that's another project altogether. But you can connect all of these insights. But coming back, now that you have seen a citizen charter, let's talk about the role of citizen charter. It's a voluntary declaration by public service providers, talking about the standard of delivery, the information available, the rights, and the remedial measures they will take within certain timeline. Timeline, by the way, is very important. If you're going to take 1 year for my refund or 2 years, how do I know? Then you can take all the time you want. Concept and importance of citizen charter. It's the genesis of the idea. It was originated in UK in 1991, aiming to make a accountable and citizen-friendly government. From the Indian perspective, we incorporated charters in the 90s from the point of view of having citizen-centric governments. The ethical concerns in citizen charter, there could be many. Number one, lack of public participation. Example, that you're developing and revising citizen charter without adequate consultation of intended beneficiary. When I'm running a project of connecting grievances with citizen charter, what am I doing? I am connecting the voice of the people with what the government is responsible for and the declaration of it. So there should not be lack of public participation. Lack of public participation doesn't mean that any random person walking on the road, you'll ask their opinion for citizen charter. No, they might not be skilled, but you get to hear their emotion, their voice through grievances. That's a beautiful and a strong data point for you. And that's why our Honorable Prime Minister holds Pragati meeting himself. He chairs it. And all chief secretaries, by the way, and all secretaries at center level are present there. And you'll be shocked at the kind of good questions that our Prime Minister asks. So if a project is held with the Maharashtrian government and citizens have asked a grievance around it, together NHAI and the Infrastructure Development Ministry in center, to Finance Ministry in center, to the Principal Secretary and Chief Secretary in Maharashtra, they all will be giving a report and they will be able to problem solve. This is actually management consulting model. I was blown away that the government was using it. But the challenge still is at the ground level, there could still be a lot more scope of improvement. A version of it is done by district magistrates as well. If not good grievance redressal, you would have seen district magistrate invite people and ask for their grievances in verbal and face-to-face, if not in digital format. That is another form of good governance. Ambiguity in citizen charter, vague language, that we are going to solve this in few days. Refund may come to you. No, if you're eligible, refund should come to you. Define eligibility. Be as objective as you can. And this might seem as a very nuanced point that may never come in the exam. If any one of you becomes IFS, IPS, IS, you will do once in your life a citizen charter project. It's as real as it can get. You'll have a citizen charter if you're an ambassador. You can do a citizen charter if you're at a district level. You can do citizen charter for your income tax department as well. Absence of grievance redressal mechanism. You're just forwarding the ticket. Your Ministry of Road and Rural Development. Your Ministry of Rural Development. And what you all do is just forward the tickets to State Department. That's not the solution. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana falls under the gambit of State Central Department. It's your responsibility to solve for it. Are you doing a quality redressal, or are you just sending anything to the citizen of this country in the name of redressal? Many of you would have received random responses from few of the private sector startups when you send in a complaint. My food didn't come well from Zomato. I asked for chicken tikka, they sent me paneer tikka. And the response wasn't good. And they would have closed your ticket. But closing the ticket or just sending a response is not redressal, right? It has to be quality redressal. Non-uniform implementation. There's a reason the Pradhan Mantri of this country is making all chief secretaries and secretaries sit together so that there is uniformity across state and center. All right. Inadequacy in publicity and awareness. The number one problem that we figured out after working with 2 years with DRPG was people do not even still know about CP grams. CP grams, it's the portal. You can code CP grams. And that's why I said that today's masterclass is going to be one of my favorite, because I'll be able to quote projects that will come in handy for all of you to write. And then we were thinking of radio campaigns and many other BPL campaigns. In marketing, there is BPL and APL, below poverty line and above poverty line. Above poverty line marketing activities are what you see on television, YouTube, hoarding boards. But when you're trying to attack, or your target audience is rural population, you need below the poverty line. Means and mechanisms that they are going to use. Nukkad Natak. There are vans of FMCG companies, Unilever, P&G. If they have to sell shampoo, they will do a marketing campaign of sachets. They'll take those sachets with them and they'll distribute them. Perhaps do a little bit of champi as well. Why can't government do all of that in a PPP format as long as the funds allow? Right? Hindustan Unilever has the best strategic advantage in our country in private sector. They are not able to go, they are able to go where Amazon is not able to grow. Don't you think Amazon would want to deliver in every nook and corner of this country? Unilever is able to go where Amazon is not able to go. Can the government think beyond the obvious and collaborate with, let's say, organizations such as Unilever and make better aware our citizens about platforms such as Citizen Charter? Do you know about Citizen Charter? साहब आप जानते भी हैं क्या होता क्या है? At the end of the day, we will have to aware our population beyond roti, kapda and makan about such things. That's when they'll be able to get these topics. All right. Strengthening ethical foundation of Citizen Charter, inclusive development. Write this down, very important. The more you write, by the way, the more you'll retain. All right. Even if I give the deck, write it down again. Write answers down, even if I give the solution. Write them as is. You'll be able to retain. Periodic review and updates. Keep revisiting the Citizen Charter. That's why I said that, is it static or is it evolving? Capacity building. Train staff to internalize and uphold the commitment of the Charter. It's not just one-man show. It's a team effort. Enhanced accountability measures. And my last question is, wait a sec. Are there risks in overpromising through Citizen Charter? And after that, we'll get into a breakout room for your question that came actually in UPSC related to the topic that we have covered today. But before that, very quickly, are there risks in overpromising through Citizen Charter? Once again, I'm trying to inculcate a balanced view in all of you. In the interest of time, I'll give the answer. There could be erosion of public trust if you overcommit and underdeliver. We often say under-promise, over-deliver, right? So over-promising could lead to erosion of public trust. There could be administrative overload as well. Everyone is just running to complete the tickets, give the refund. Nobody is working on systemic reforms. Nobody is working to take the country towards the moon if everyone is just responding to each and every ticket. There could be reputational damage as well. this sarkar doesn't do the work that they promised to do, when you're over promising. There could be dissatisfaction among employees as well. When employees are failing day after day, not being able to achieve what has been committed, then you're leading your team towards a dissatisfaction. There could be escalation of grievances. There is opportunity cost also. Time is limited. When you work in government, economics principle, what is the biggest assumption in economics? Resources are constrained. You can't solve everything perfectly. You would want to give budget for the protecting our sovereignty. And similarly, you would want to have the COVID vaccine. And similarly, you would want to revamp our education system to have better NEP versions as well. And similarly, you would want to have better tinkering labs so that every citizen of this country or every kid in this country can dream of becoming an entrepreneur. With that, we are almost at the wrap up of today's content. You have all covered 5 to 6 topics, right? In terms of tools and techniques of good governance, I've talked to you about the aspects of good governance. You know the examples of each and every now. You know the challenges of overdoing them as well. All right. So that you are able to write balanced answer. I've consciously chosen a lot of examples from my real life to be able to give you practical view. Now you'll write much more nuanced answer on citizen charter. You have seen one. All right. You'll be able to connect economics and ethics now. All right. And without further ado, I'll just share my screen very quickly. And this is the question for today's breakout room. This is a UPSC 2022 question. And here is what it says. You can take a screenshot if you want. Whistleblower who reports a corruption and illegal activities, wrongdoing, and misconduct to the concerned authorities run the risk of being exposed to grave danger, physical harm, and victimization by the vested interests, accused persons, and his team. What policy measures would you suggest to strengthen the protection mechanism to safeguard the whistleblower? Notice the term policy measures. This question was in ethics paper. They're talking about whistleblower. Write holistic answers as you get into the breakout room. All right. You'll all write the answer for 5 to 6 minutes. You then brainstorm with your peers for 5 to 6 minutes. Then we'll all come to back. I'll make one of you speak the answer so that we get some reference. By the way, the answer to the last week's masterclass is already uploaded on your LearnNest if you haven't checked it yet. All right. Then we'll call it a day. And just quickly, I think it has been announced many times before. The principal secretary is coming specially to teach you all. It's okay if you haven't done any pre-read. There are not going to be pre-reads. I've realized one thing in life. Dealing with senior professionals at the stature of chairmen, CEOs, secretaries is a great confidence booster. You need that confidence at the stage of life you're in. All right. So irrespective of your ethics preparation, show up. It will be followed by a networking night as well. All right. Brilliant opportunity for you to step back, take a breath, and then restart your entire preparation. Misfits is more than just the learning. It's literally about the community. And I mean this when I say this. Naman and I are going outside of what we were supposed to do to deliver this for all of you. The ball is in your court. We will solve for skill. You will have to solve for motivation. If you solve for motivation, I don't think anybody is going to stop you. All right. So let's quickly get into breakout rooms and then we'll come back. So I'll start the breakout rooms now. It's for 12 minutes. Be very efficient and write the answer. Don't do lazy work. Literally write it down. Even if you write 5 words or 5 sentences, but write things down. All right. Good luck. I'll see you in 12 minutes. Everyone, please start the discussions now. I'll be moving from breakout room to breakout room to know the discussions.
To the problems submitted by whistleblowers should be reacted to, and the rights of the people should be taught as to how can they report anonymously, and especially to the low level workers. And I think that once a loophole has been found by a whistleblower, other people should be educated about it, that this could happen to other people as well. And in case, let's say,
Hi, folks. I was called in this meeting room. What's the issue?
I'll just add the so clearly defined standard of procedure for reporting such crimes or activities, so that there's efficient escalation of the issue. There should be anonymity to safeguard the privacy and life of the whistleblower, which is a very real concern, because we look at the case of the NHAI, where when officer had highlighted corruption issue in the Golden Triangle and then he was murdered or something, Golden Triangle Highways case, if I remember that correctly, then maker-checker concept should prevail. Like, a criminal cannot be the judge in his own case. In many circumstances where the report could be about the highest authority at the topmost of the hierarchy, that person cannot judge or would be the actual judge for this inquiry. Then inquiry and investigation by independent.
Rightness can only survive until courage leaves. And the legal framework for whistleblowing is Companies Act 2013 and Whistleblowers Protection Act 2014. And some measures to take on protection mechanism is sensitizing moral courage to speak up, rewarding people who brings mishappenings to the public, attitude building, keeping anonymity as the core basis of whistleblowing, and also enhancing public trust on complaint authorities. Is there
So
anything to add up?
add on to Chetan, we can also take inspiration from whistleblower protection laws from Canada, Japan, New Zealand, and South Africa. These countries have very good whistleblower protection laws.
We can code those like salient features.
I'm asking that you have started with the causes of the whistleblower.
No, I think Shubham is stating that why there is a need for whistleblowers. Like, I think.
The need and importance. Basically, the need. Yeah. What is the need to have a whistleblower protection act? Why do we need it? So, any example? Can anyone think of any example, like a real life example or something?
I don't know his name. Someone white who whistleblowed about US government.
Oh yeah, you're right.
I don't know his name. I'm not recalling his name.
Yeah.
He was a techie.
And he worked with the CIA, I think. He
Yes.
turned against them and leaked to WikiLeaks or something.
He has to take asylum.
We heard of the famous anonymous attacker who hacked the web of the US government.
Yes.
And also a kid who has hacked the NASA.
Okay.
I'm not able to recollect.
Okay, are there any examples of or any works that are going on presently in any government, any country?
Nestle company, right?
What happened with that?
The Nestle company, the food, like the poison it sells through food, and people who raised they were silenced forever. They were reports also, but it became inactive. There was no
Okay.
further progress shown in that case study of
No,
Nestle.
I think there was action taken because the products were not released in the market for
No,
some.
that never happened.
No, it affected their brand. They
Yeah.
have to rebrand because of this. Nestle.
Maggie was
Okay.
banned for a few years, but it bounced back eventually.
Yes.
So once
So that
they
was that
whatever they were
means
accused of, I think they can. That's why
means
they.
you're saying that in the case of Nestle, it was like someone from the inside, some insider leaked some information publicly
Yeah,
about the
insider
malpractices.
about the they were like various food products for the water bottles, for the
Okay.
formulas that the babies were fed, and what kind of actions were like promoted to like stop babies from being breastfed and completely dependent on the formula ones, and also
Okay.
the use of MSGs and chemicals in various food products and all. And
Okay.
plastics
That
also.
there is one company. Which company is that makes baby oils and powders?
Johnson's
Johnsons and
Johnson.
Johnsons.
Yeah,
Johnsons were
very famous.
accused of like
Johnson
some
and Johnson.
cancerous element
Yeah, cancerous.
added to the powders.
Okay. What else heading could be added to this? Like we talk about the policy framework. What should be the end of the answer? Like a balanced conclusion. What should be given that?
All right, welcome back. I went through few breakout rooms. There was some decent discussion happening this time. So well done. I really hope that you all have individually written the answer also in some shape or format, because discussion is starting stage. That person is not going to write your answer on the detail, right? So happy to hear from one of you how you attempted the answer. Pranav Kumar.
Yes, ma'am. In this question, I tried to, first of all, like, since it's a whistleblower question, I tried to give a context by giving some real life example. And uh, one example that was at the top of the mind was the 2004 case, I think, Satyendra Dubey, an IT graduate who had given a complaint about some irregularities in NHAI. And for that, he had to pay by ultimately, he was killed. So that example I gave, and then moved on to the policy measures. So first is I'll just mention it briefly in 5 points. First is legal protection and legal assistance to that person as well as to his family, and ensure that his identity is not leaked in public. Secondly, there should be strong adherence to the privacy, and that and his there should be anonymous ways of submitting the complaint as well. Then another policy measure which is very straightforward, but which is ignored, like rule of law, and that will ensure that punishment, whichever is there, that happens in due time, and the I mean it projects that our state is not a soft state. Then training should be there. For example, just to just to give the complaint, there shouldn't be unnecessary risks. So one policy measure like Mission Karma Yogi, that to train the civil servants. So under that holistic training, there should be there are aspects of like emotional intelligence, developing emotional intelligence and right way of approaching such issues. And lastly, to ensure that these cases are settled quickly, there should be special trial courts. So these can be some policy measures. And so
Correct. Well
I didn't
done.
write the conclusion.
Warm round of applause for taking an attempt and voicing out loud. I think this is certainly on the good lines. Few of the points that we covered in the class around transparency could have been inculcated as well. That would further strengthen your answer. That's almost the wrap up of this masterclass. And like I said, almost the wrap up of your half-point curriculum with ethics. We'll all meet you on Sunday with the principal secretary and of course for the networking night. The link is different. All right. It's not on this link. Please don't forget that. The details will come to you on your LinkedIn social media community, whatever the link, etc. will be. Leverage the time between now and Sunday to do a lot of revisions, to catch up on whatever might have been missed, and to figure out a little bit about yourself as well. Civil services or any competitive examination preparation is additive over and above curriculum in a way that you find a newer version of yourself. So spend time with yourself, do meditation, sit without cell phones. Many a time just sitting without anything on your mind can just give you the brightest answers. With that, I call it a day and I'm going to see you on Sunday. Ciao.